welcome, Kris. Lovely to see you.
Thank you for having me.
And you're in perfect setting for a perfect moment of India's rise. I always have maintained and said that India's problems will be solved by Indians and by Indian methods. And that has been proved over the years. And the biggest proof of that is the success of Aadhaar and UPI, NPCI, the digital transactions. I think the UGC chairman spoke about people using smartphones, and perhaps the UGC should commission a study on the level of financial empowerment that has happened because of one institution called the National Payments Corporation of India, because it's amazing. I mean, globally, people have a wow factor when they look at people. I mean, you can go to any street, anywhere, scan a QR code and conduct a transaction. That is an amazing insight into the Indian mind. Today we are so to coming back to the sessions, the job market and what's the new job, and we'll look at the whole idea through the prism of Kris Gopalakrishnan's experience at Infosys and now his experience as a venture capitalist. So India, we all agree that it's the Goldilocks moment. We are hitting the right notes. We are at the right place at the right time. And we do know that we have enough challenges, and challenges are opportunities. So how do you see this period unrolling, Kris?
So, Shankar, you rightly said this. We are at the right place at the right time. This is our moment, and we have to grab it with both hands. That's clearly what I see. And the reason I say this is India is yet to develop. Hence, going from 3 trillion to, let's say, 30 trillion will be an amazing journey. And in the last 30 years, we have gone from about 600 billion to 3 trillion, and we have seen the changes that have happened. Except for the students at the back, most of us have lived through those changes. And the students at the back would live through the changes of taking from 3 to 30 trillion, and that will be even more exciting than the last 30 years. Second, I see us, creating growth engines in multiple areas. You talked about fintech and the revolution that we have created by uniquely architecting the fintech space, very different from rest of the world. Public infrastructure and private innovation on top of that. Data being available on a shared basis and innovation on top of that. Similarly, healthcare is transforming as we speak. Again, digitization is going to have an impact. We saw the COVID app and its impact on how vaccination was given to about 1 billion people. We are seeing the transition to electric vehicles in the automotive space. We are seeing significant investment in infrastructure, road, railways, airports. I can go on and on. Education, the previous session. Chairman UGC talked about the changes that are happening. So, with all this, I feel that, it's setting us up to create a fast-growing economy, which if we work together, I believe we can take the growth rate to 10%. And that's why I believe that this is India's time. And behind all this, emerging technologies. And we are comfortable with technology. See, that is what I want to share with you from my experience in the IT services industry, is Indians are very comfortable with technology. You talked about, the salesperson on the roadside, the Dukanwala using QR code, right? We are actually comfortable with technology, I believe, bottom to top. So this transition is ours to take advantage of or lose it.
So that we don't lose it. I mean, there is at one level, the government is building physical infrastructure. Then there is the digital infrastructure which is panning out. I must say that under Diksha there are some very interesting initiatives. I'm just looking forward to how it penetrates the primary school domain. Use of QR codes for students at the end of chapters of books to sort of access material, for teachers to access teaching material. All those are very interesting steps, and some of these steps have been done by X-Step and Shankar Marwada and all those people. But there is always this risk. We used to say this about the Indian cricket team, that we could snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. So we have to be careful. So what's the big challenge? How is the job market? And when we look at it, in the last 5-7 years, we have had an explosion of unicorns. So at one point, there were people looking for staff. You couldn't find enough staff. And now we have this paradox of also high unemployment, but also companies struggling to find staffing. How do you see this whole job landscape, the employment landscape sort of morphing? We briefly discussed how the hybrid workforce, there is the gig economy, and then there is the hybrid force. You made a very interesting point about gender empowerment and the hybrid workforce. Why don't you sort of start there and we can take this?
See,
And by hybrid, I mean people who are able to work remote part-time and remote in office part-time, which is like the biggest innovation that has come through thanks to COVID, or maybe we shouldn't thank COVID, but the circumstance.
So, see, India always has multiple realities. So, for a substantial percentage of the population, there is a need to transition from dependence on agriculture, where productivity is extremely low, to other parts of the economy. Because they still are not literate to work in the services part of the economy, they need to transition to manufacturing, and some to other services like construction, etc. And that's one part of the economy. Then the other part of the economy, and I'm just jumping several layers, right at the top, the IT services folks, people who talk about the technology changes affecting their jobs, etc. And they are global employees. They are very well paid, and there, if you are willing to retrain yourself, jobs are actually available, because like you said, companies are struggling to staff. So that's one aspect of this. So we do have to create jobs that are meaningful, that will increase the income of people as they transition to the parts of the economy where productivity has to increase, like agriculture. Even in manufacturing, we need to transition to advanced manufacturing. So we need to, because the knowledge intensity, the knowledge content, the skills that are required for any job today is increasing if you want to increase productivity. So skilling is very important because of that. So that's one snapshot of this. The other snapshot is when you talk about the startups, etc. We created huge buzz around startups. Prime Minister leading from the front from 2015, Startup India, Stand Up India program, etc. Rightly so, because that's what gives the economy a boost. Typically, economies grow linearly, 5-6%, let's say. But when you want to take it from 5-6% to 8%, 10%, you need to accelerate it. And acceleration happens, significant investment into new areas, new manufacturing, new industries being created. Similarly, acceleration happens when you create startups. Because startups, especially technology-driven startups, grow. They talk about the J curve, right? They start small, then accelerate, and then exponentially grow. That will have significant um, acceleration to, that will give significant acceleration to the economy. They attract significant external investments. The startup industry has attracted about $45 billion of investment. I think last 12 months, about $25 billion. So, which is very important. Now, we cannot, they don't actually employ a large number of people. Uh, and, and we also should not, get carried away when you talk about job losses in the
In the
startup
domain,
ecosystem,
yeah.
because when a company runs out of money, right, they shut shop. What do you do with the employees? The employees lose the job. So when I talk to a person, when I talk to a student who is seeking job, if I say that if you're going to join a startup, just like the investor, you are taking a risk. You could lose your job. If you're not willing to accept that, look for a safer job, which may be in a larger company, which may be a less esoteric area. But
It's a
if you,
bit like playing a T20 match.
yes,
There is inherent risk in the startup. Okay, you could find it
clearly,
exciting, be
yeah,
rise.
you can make more money, but you should be willing to take the
Take
risk.
risk.
Now I'm in a forum that's by a media company, but still I will say this: the media doesn't separate these things, and media highlights 500 jobs lost year, but they don't say that that industry employs 50 lakh people, and 500 is nothing. So you cannot so we have to set the context properly, and all these things are realities in India.
So a large part of the headline is grabbed by the Byju's and the Zomatos and others, but the real startup activity happens in smaller gig economies. I mean, the people who create services, startups, and all. Now, there is an employment there which the government is trying to formulate policy as it's evolved. Always technology is ahead of regulation. So, and then there is the hybrid, which is part-time remote work and all. And there is this phenomena called moonlighting, which we've been hearing. I mean, the same person. So it's like the IPL player playing for two different teams. So how do you see all these panning out? Is this a reflection of the competitive spirit in the job market, or is it a reflection of the inadequacies, the gaps in the job market?
No, I think it is the vibrancy of the economy. It's creating newer opportunities. The whole space of hybrid work came about, as you rightly said, out of COVID. Right? COVID necessitated people to work from home. Um, Once you learn a skill, it's better to retain that skill, because you don't know when you will need it again. And I say that about individuals, I say that about organizations. Do not give up those skills. But coming back to office is very important, because just like in a university campus, you don't just learn what is in the curriculum, you also learn how to live by yourself, how to make decisions by yourself. You become more self-confident, you create network of friends, you get mentorship from faculty. There's a lot more development that happens. Similarly, in an office, the networking with your colleagues, the informal conversations that happen in the corridors, let's get together and build something on the fly. All of those opportunities are lost. Culture doesn't get built when you work remotely, etc. Typically on your own. So there is a need for people to come back to office, but don't forget the skills that you learned and the technology that enabled you to learn those skills, etc. Then the you know questions about there are other forms, like the gig economy, which gives again options for people. And look at taxi drivers. they uh, they were without technology they're kind of lost, right, in terms of how to get a get a new ride and things like that. If you think about how Ola or Uber has made our life easier, it has also made the driver's life easier, and they can now decide to work, let's say, between 4 in the evening to 10 in the night, or that flexibility is there. And the whole gig economy is about being flexible and giving the choice to the individual to work at their own conveniences. Part-time work, which allows people to again take care of their work-life balance if they need to, or if they need to take care of elderly parents at home. So believe that all of these things are giving you new options, new
And
flexibilities,
this
and
option has got very important
societal
gender
benefit
quotient.
also.
Yeah.
Now, I think government also need to think. We had one set of rules for employment, and now don't apply those to these without understanding the positives and the negatives. There has to be flexibility, and we must allow these things. There are significant benefits to doing these things. You will kill the goose that lays the golden egg if you start regulating all of these things with the same set of rules and regulations. I think we are going through significant change. Multiple forces are playing together at this point, technology being only one of them. But technology allows these flexibilities, and when people are taking um, you know, those choices very seriously. So we must allow this, and of course, I strongly believe that regulation is required, otherwise misuse will happen. But but intelligent regulation, and a regulation which is flexible, light-handed. Some regulators are sitting here, at least from academia, they're allowing people to go into, the regulatory hierarchy. But I don't see why business people are not getting into the regulatory hierarchy. That circulation also should happen, and so that you
So
get
the
multiple
institutional
inputs.
knowledge from the sector comes to the regulatory.
Multiple inputs have come in, and they understand this better, and they understand the struggle businesses go through with the regulators.
So one area that remote working has opened up, I don't know from your standpoint, is the positive of the ability to work hybrid. Is it being tapped enough by the private sector? And it's something that the government should clearly look at. I mean, recently the economic survey pointed out the female workforce participation rate is at a historic low, and one of the reasons is that the Indian industry services companies are not adequately equipped to deal with a mother with a child or aging parents at home, although more enlightened private companies, for instance Infosys or Tatas or all, may be having such systems. But the ability to work part-time from home opens up a whole avenue for improving the imbalance in the economy.
Yeah. So we talked about regulatory change. We now talking about industry or business adopting to these things, but I also feel that society must also adopt.
Yes,
Right? We
very
are
true.
still a patriarchal society.
Very true.
So there are there are mindset issues today. Uh, we need to think about uh, the family side, the societal side, and there is a requirement for all of us to sit together and create that climate of opinion, the mindset change that's required. So even if, let's say, the business is willing to say that I will give 6 months for pregnancy leave for pregnancy, etc. If you are an MSME, a small enterprise, that does pose problems for them. They have to get a replacement for that person. They have to continue to pay extra salary during that time period. So that's on one side. On the other side, uh, you know, i- is the father willing to take some leave and sit at home and look after the child for some time, so that the mother can maybe work, or is the mother allowed to work using the hybrid mode that's now available? But because the expectation in the family is the child will be looked after by the mother. So societal changes also are required in parallel, and our thinking is needs to change. And this is where I feel that you know enlightened discussions on these things are not happening, and forums like this, I hope, brings out these, and of course the paper brings it out in the public, much larger public, so that we can take it. I see this as positives. I see this as opportunities. I see, very importantly, I feel our society, Indian society, is the one that learns and adapts much better than any other society. I firmly believe this, because we have 5,000 years of history of having adapted. So we have, I believe, the best genes to adapt. Now we need to I know some people need to come out and have honest discussions around these things, so that we can create the public opinion around it.
Right.
But today we are completely on opposite sides, and there is no meeting in the middle, right? Either black or white. There is nothing in the middle today.
So coming back to the opportunities that we have, if you were to you were asked to specify the three things that we need in the regulatory domain to change to enable employers and employees to have the flexibility to work and leverage their talent to the full potential. Do you think the current legal framework allows that kind of flexibility? Yes or no, whatever. And the second part is that where do you see this going ahead, and how can you move with the times? Because
Yeah.
we will have opportunities of and you probably know this better than most people, a large part of the offshoring is going to be accelerated as the Western world ages faster. So how do we tap into those opportunities?
Yeah, our youth is our strength, and their productivity will keep our economy growing faster for at least few years to come. So again, that's the window that we have. See, first and foremost, I strongly believe that when so much change is happening, we need to have trust um, as the relationship, between any two parties,
Correct.
right? Which said that there are um, no restrictions on them on reservations, or no restrictions on faculty, no restrictions on fee, nothing. But you don't give our IITs the same flexibility. So you tie their hands behind and then ask them to compete now. So these are things which we need to address quickly, so that we take away that confusion. That's what I'm telling you when I say we need flexibility, we need collaboration.
So we started by talking about the opportunities that we have. Do you sense that we are at least in the trajectory, in the direction of this evolution of norms, laws, regulations, rules? There is much more collaboration happening.
Well, the other extreme of that or other part of that is when I see youth today, they're fearless. Okay, they think they can compete with the best in the world. They believe that you know they they are ready to take on any challenges. You can see that in the startup world, etc. So I'm optimistic when I talk to youth today. I'm very optimistic, and I've seen uh, in the startup space what is happening today. Even when employees lose jobs, in spite of all the headlines that you see, I'm finding that they are able to find jobs provided they stay relevant. So reskilling is important at the individual level. Relevance is important in the organization level. Any organization, any entity today has to be relevant, individual or an organization. And if we keep that in mind, if we facilitate that reskilling, if we facilitate that ability to retool an organization, I'm confident that existing organizations will do well. We should allow existing organizations to shut down if they are not more relevant. Make it easy to shut down. That's again a huge challenge in India. You cannot shut down something. And you should allow new businesses to flourish, set up new businesses and flourish. All of these things are important. It's nothing new. I'm not saying anything new here. And progress is being made. Significant progress is being made. We need to continue in that direction and do it in a collaborative way.
I don't remember in my generation or the generations that followed ever being called fearless. So I think this is a huge tribute to the current generation that they are being called fearless.
I don't know. When I talk to some of the startup founders, I am really surprised. Am I, same place as they are? I fear for some of the things that they want to do, but they don't have that fear at this point. They don't have fear of failure.
So for being called fearless generation, I think you guys should give a very big round of applause. I think we have time just for 2 quick questions from the students only. Okay, the 2 girls here behind. The next one on the left. You stand up so that you're not missed out.
Good morning, sir. I'm Pradiksha from MOP Vaishnav College. So, in your speech, you had mentioned that working in a startup is quite risky than compared to renowned companies. But in the recent recession that's happening around the world, I think predominantly it's the big startups that are sacking people even at midnight 3 a.m. So, how would you classify this scenario and how would you advise to youngsters like us?
Yeah, so I will reiterate my statement. Joining a startup is risky because if the startup shuts down, you will lose your job. Okay. Now you're talking about big startups that are, let's say, 10 years old, 20 years old, etc. That's where I said if an organization is not relevant, or part of an organization is not relevant, they have to retrain the people. So see, restructuring the workforce within a company, that flexibility has to be given to an organization. Agree to be retrained, must be flexible to be retrained. And that's what I meant. I don't know whether I answered your question or not.
So the important thing to remember, young lady, is that there is an individual responsibility to upskill. And there is an institutional responsibility to reskill. And those are a collaborative aspects. There's one more question. One lady was standing. Yeah, please stand up and identify yourself.
Hi, sir. So, you touched upon the topic of our generation, the latest youth.
One minute. Identify yourself.
I'm Sneha,
Oh.
and
Yeah.
so you touched upon how the latest youth is fearless compared to the previous generations of workforce. Just like how moonlighting became a predominant hot topic during the COVID pandemic, there's another work culture habit that is being followed by the latest generation, Gen Z, which is quiet quitting, which we don't really see in the previous workforce generations like Gen X or the millennials. Gen Z just sees work as a part of life, and it doesn't really have work as an identity of its generation. And how do you see quiet quitting influencing the company's productivity or the economy as an extension? Because we don't really work 40 hours a week as how it used to be 20 years back or 10 years back, for that matter.
Yeah, so these are transitions. First of all, moonlighting, by in the name itself says that, right? Now you're doing something on the side without transparency, and that's clearly not right. If you want to take up multiple assignments, be open about it. Be like a consultant. Be a you can say that I'll work 3 hours here in a day, 4 hours there in a day, etc. Be transparent about it. Then I don't think any company will have a problem. It's not being open, transparent, disclosing it is the problem. About quiet quitting, I think the again for maybe this Gen Z or Gen Alpha, I think is the next one is Gen Alpha now. For them, work-life balance, meaning of life, purpose, all of those things are very different. Each generation goes through that, and we need to understand and accept that, and the new economic models that being created should also factor this in. We may have factored in that people will work full time. We may have factored in that they will work for let's say productive years is 40 years, etc. So we need to factor those in. At the other extreme, people are going to live till 80. Our concept is retirement is at 60. That's gone. I think middle age is 60 now. So we have to think about what do people do between 60 and 80. And if you sit at home, you're going to fall sick. So you have to figure out second career at the age of 60 and things like that. And what do they do? We have to retrain them, reskill them. Our universities must be open to admitting these people, going back to school and working or becoming an entrepreneur, etc. So all of these things are now going to become relevant as society changes, as technology makes those changes happen.
Some quiet thinking is also required with quiet quitting. So when talking about generations, my own classification of generations is the postcard generation, the inland letter generation, the phone call generation, then the STD call generation, then the dial-up generation, and now the Wi-Fi generation. I don't know, when we get Starlink or satellite, maybe things will change. So,
yeah, we are getting brain implants, right? So I can transfer my thoughts directly to your brain.
Directly. Thank you very much. This has been a very exciting and interesting conversation.
Thank you very much.